thing you said is that there is on your system, even if this correlation doesn't happen to exist when we look at a broader sample size, there's still some risk of corruption increasing if we implement my version of socialism. And sure, I'll agree to that. There's some risk that there's some chance that corruption increases if we implement socialism. But that's not going to be relevant when we're debating the merits of capitalism versus socialism. Because yes, implementing socialism would have some percentage chance of increasing corruption, but also staying with capitalism also carries, and having a smaller government also carries some percentage chance that corruption is going to be higher under a capitalist system than under an alternative socialist system. And so when we're trying to parse out.
Okay, guys, so you heard that, right? Apparently, having a smaller government in a capitalist society means that it will be far more corruption than a socialist one with a much more larger government, right? Because I've seen this debate a couple times with the good libertarian buddy of mine from the UK, the philosophical zombie hunter. I did a couple of videos about him and some of his articles. You guys should really check him out because he's more versed into like these debates than I am. Because you can't really debate with some of these socialists, right? Because these socialists be coming up with the most blatant, brain dead terms, topics, whatever you want to call it, or whatever you want to use when you debate a socialist. I would still debate a socialist, but they just, gotta bring something good to the table. This whole, what he said right here, when the philosophical zombie hunter, he was putting forth some, he was talking to him about how in a much more capitalist society, with a much more limited or smaller government, or even when it pertains to some anarcho-capitalists, right, where they would have like no government at all, and everything would be done with voluntary transactions and no need for forced taxation. If people want to do taxation, they can do it by choice. It didn't need to be forced upon people. Apparently, in a society like that, this guy, Mouthy Infidel, he said that in a society like that, it would be much more corruption than a much more bigger country, or bigger government, I'm sorry. Now, I just wanted to ask them, is that what it was with Mao's China? Was that what it was with Nazi Germany? Was that how it was with the USSR? Was that how it was with any of these socialist countries with big governments? Was that the case, that it was no corruption? Because in all these socialist countries, with these socialist leaders and these big socialist governments, left a huge trail of dead bodies. But apparently, that's not his version of socialism. He was doing that whole, since it wasn't my version of socialism doing that debate, then it's not real socialism. My socialism, from what he says, was basically capitalism and the welfare state. So it just goes to show, like, every socialist has a different variety of socialism. If their socialism does not go with what their socialism was, then it wasn't real socialism. That's how it is with a lot of these socialists out here that have these debates. It's always the whole, well, they didn't do what I think socialism was, so it wasn't real socialism. But this whole take that a much more smaller government is going to be more corrupt than a bigger government is deliberately disingenuous and misleading. You can also say that it's probably misinformation, right? Because we've seen what's going on. Because let's take a look back in 2019, right? When the lockdowns was implemented, and now they are thinking about bringing them back. But that's a video for another time, right? When the lockdown was implemented, all these small business owners had to shut down their business. And if they did open their business in order to try to keep feeding their employees, here come big government coming in and fining them, or either shutting them down and taking control of everything. That is what big government does. If you don't play by the government rules, they will shut you down, fine you a whole bunch of money, and then say you should just listen. Or what about this whole democracy they got going on? You really think in a big government democracy matters? They are literally on the way towards authoritarianism or fascism, because Joe Biden literally promoted fascism like a couple years ago when the lockdowns was still going on, where he said we was going to have the government come and force you to do what needs to be done. Basically saying like, us as the government, the states, we're going to come in and merge or do some policies that's going to force you from us to do what needs to be done. That is blatant fascism. So, because in the big government, where everything is basically under their law, it moves towards fascism. That's basically what it is. Because fascism is literally the merger between state and private businesses. State or corporate entities. That's literally what fascism is. But when you have this whole big government is less corrupt thing, it's not a good point, and it actually makes you look like a full-blown statist, right? The full-blown authoritarianism, you don't look as humanitarian, and now you got a whole bunch of other socialists coming out and saying like, yeah, a big government means less problems, but that's far from the truth. Once again, it's far from the truth, because a smaller government would mean. I'm sorry, let me just rephrase that. With a smaller government, you will have more possibilities and more power to overthrow them, abolish them, or completely, to overthrow and abolish them. You can't do that with big government, because if the government gets too big, then your rights as an individual, your liberty, just completely disappears, right? It disappears. So this whole big government is less corrupt than the small one. It's deliberately disingenuous. It's a full-fledged lie. And any socialist or Marxist that tell you this, they have no idea what the hell to talk about. But that's all I got for this video, man. If you guys like the video, like, comment, subscribe, share the video, and notification bell. See you on the next one. Peace.